Hey, welcome back to Burnt Wood Workshop. Today we're going to talk about templates. If you wanted to make repeated cuts on something in woodworking. For example, I make this shelf. It's got a little detail here that I have to remake every time. So what I did was I made a template of this piece. Now I can just use a router and repeatedly make this piece exactly the same every time. I had to do a set of corbels for a customer one time. It was a two-piece set of corbels. So what I did was I scanned the corbels into the computer and I made these. Then I could trace them out and cut them out the same every single time. And you're limited by the scanner by 8.5 by 11 unless you have a bigger scanner. But you're limited by 8.5 by 11. But if you want to make something bigger, you could do something like this, where if I want this to be 24 inches, I make this one, and I can take it and I can make another one, and then when I put it on the board, I can double stick tape them down next to each other, and now I've got a 24-inch template. Or I can route out half of it, take it off, flip it over, and route out the other half. Either way works. I haven't even tried this one yet. It's just a prototype I'm working on. But these are some options for using your laser to make templates. One of the other things we're going to do in the future is we're going to make a multi-function table with bench dogs, and I've got a template made up for that. So we're going to go another video on that later. But today we're going to show you how to make these templates and how to use them. So some of the templates you can cut out with just a scroll saw or whatever. This one I did on the laser because I scanned it in. When you scan in something like this, the board I used was really rough. I painted it white. I sanded it down and painted it white. It made it a lot easier to trace. So on these, I scanned these in and cut them out with a laser so I could maintain the exact details that were on these. Then, when I actually cut these out, I could cut most of it out. I didn't use a bushing on this one. I used a bearing with a flush cut bit. That way, this is exactly the same size as what I was cutting out. The only thing you don't get when you do that is all of your fine points. Like it'll go here, but it won't go here. And it definitely wouldn't go in here or up in here. So what we had to do was we had to cut these out afterwards. So once I traced everything out, I cut what I could, and then I finished the rest of it out on my bandsaw. But using the laser to make this template made these exactly the same as what the originals were, which was really handy. So another template you could make with your router is, say you want to do lettering. Now the only thing with lettering is you got to keep in mind what the maximum diameter of the bushing that you're using is. Because this one here was for a lit sign. Just an example, this won't work because this is too narrow for that to go through. Now you could make this sign work by making each letter big enough so that this was big enough to fit this through. So you can do this style sign. You just have to expand the size of it. It's going to come out looking just like this, but the template's going to be bigger. And so this wouldn't fit. Say if you're using the S1, you've got a 19.5 inch bed size, so you can go 19.5 inch, and you want to make a sign this big, you'd have to break this up because the letters would be too big to fit on the board. On the M1 Ultra, you're looking at about 12 inches, so you could do each individual letter. The other thing you want to keep in mind when you make these, like for example, this one here, this is not a straight circle. So when you want to route this out, you want to set this in place, and then you want to double-sided tape this down so that you get this exact design when you route it out. So keep these letters so you can stick these into the right place. Then when you get these stuck down, you can pull this out, and there's your routed area. So that's one thing to do. The other thing you want to keep in mind is on these there are spiral upcut, spiral downcut, top bearing, bottom bearing. There's a bunch of other things you can look into. I use the bushing setup right now. I've used some of the bearing ones. I find the bushing one works real nice for stuff like this. And if you were making a sign like this, I would stick to something like this that has a lot of wide area. Then you don't have to worry about the narrow spots because it's very large. Your router bit's obviously going to fit through, no problem. So after you've cut your pattern out in your wood, you put it in your printer, scanner, fax, whatever you've got, and you run a copy of it. So in order to scan your board in, you're going to need a scan app. And what we've got here is we've got our scan app. We're going to hit scan, and it's going to scan it in and put it in your folder. And then from there, you're going to load it into XES. Okay, so here's our scan in XES. And what we want to do is we want to take this and we want to make it an outline for a cutout. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to crop this up to clean up some of the area that we're working with. Okay, there. Now we've cropped that down to the area we're working with. Okay, so we've got our image cropped. Now we're going to trace this image. And when we trace the image, we're going to get a couple little things, but that looks really good. So we're going to save that. And that is our trace for our cutout. Now, we've got some extra stuff on here. So we're going to release, ungroup, and we're going to delete that. This is garbage. Delete that. This is our image. Now we've got a little bit of a goober right there, so we want to edit that. We want to simplify this. It's just going to make it a little less work. We just want to straighten this here up. So if we can just... Okay, there we go. We want to tweak that in, and we want this one here straight. We want this one to come straight across to there. And we want to straighten this to that. All right, that's pretty straight. So there is our, done. That's going to be our pattern. And this is done. Okay, so now this looks nice. We're going to take this and we're going to switch to cut. We're going to go 100. We're going to go 6. And that's going to be for our 1/4 inch plywood. So we're going to use our blade runner, which I modified so we can see the blade. So when you cut this out, you should try to stay about 1/8 of an inch away from here, which I messed up and cut too close here. If you happen to do that, you can just move your pattern back 1/8 of an inch if this isn't critical. This is just a support, so if it's 1/8 of an inch smaller, nobody's gonna know. Okay, so we've got our two-sided tape on our pattern. I'll peel the backers off of that. And then when we stick this on, we want to even it up there and kind of even space it with this. As you can see, we're a little bit tight there, but it should be within 1/8 of an inch. And then we're going to have a gap on the top, which we'll finish up afterwards to make these two exactly the same. So what you do is you stick your pattern onto your piece of wood with some double-sided tape. Then we're going to take the router. We already did one pass. We're going to take our router. You just do a small pass. You don't want to take too much out at once. And then we're just going to drop it down a little bit further. And we're going to go again. And you want to
keep your router as flat on here as you can. So if you hold it like this with your fingers as best you can to try and keep this a nice flat route. And we're going to drop it down again. And we're going to make another pass. So to get your final pass, you just want to take the router, drop it down on the table, and that's going to be your final pass. So this is our final piece, and as you can see, we've got a little 1/8 of an inch reveal where our bushing rides. But this is our piece. Okay, because we modified the one to make these the same, we're just gonna mark that, and we'll cut this one down to fit this one, and then we'll match them up. When you do this long cut here, because of the space back here, you want to put a different board, just a scrap of something to hold that in place. So when you cut this, this doesn't shift on you, you get a straight cut. And if you get a little bit there, and there's our piece. So now that we've run them through on that, we're going to hit this last little part with our drum sander. Okay, so what I would normally do is double stick the two of these together when we're doing this part to match them up. And then we've got our drum sander. That. One little spot we got to smooth out more perfect. There we go. There are two matched sides.
So for things like this shelf here, I make this in several different styles, different colors, different shapes, well, different engravings. So on this, I made a template for the back, I made a template for the sides, and that's what we just saw making these. These are the two sides, and then I also use the template to make the back piece. And then once that's all painted up, I'll engrave it and assemble it. For things like this corbel set, these were two different pieces, one with a middle section and then two outer sides, and I'll show a picture of what that looked like finished. But you can cut these out with a jigsaw, scroll saw, bandsaw, whatever. But if you've got a laser, it's a nice way to do it. And I've done a number of them with the laser. So these templates can really help you out a lot. Speed things up, especially if you're making multiple pieces. Another nice thing that works out with a laser is you can pre-cut this part of it so that can go right in that perfectly. So if it's just something you drew up on a piece of paper and you want to cut it out, the laser is a nice option. Or you can trace this onto a piece of wood and cut it out by hand. But the laser is another way to do it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and thanks for watching.